I want to call to order this regular meeting of the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships to be held on Zoom and operated in a hybrid form. I'm assuming that since our executive director is at Melrose 206 Melrose Street, anybody who comes in person will be at least accommodated by you.
Yes.
The first order of business is to review the minutes from September 27th, 2021. Do I hear a motion to accept them as circulated?
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Thank you, Donna.
I'll second.
Thank you, Liz. Any corrections, additions, changes? If not, are you ready for the vote?
Yeah, Alicia's coming in now.
Oh, good. We'll wait until she gets here. Hi, Alicia. Welcome. We started just 2 minutes ago, and we're at the point of accepting the minutes of September 27th. So before we vote, anything that needs changing that you have seen. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye and raise a hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No abstentions. All right. The next, resident and citizen participation. No people other than board members and staff here. The next is COVID-19 update. Christine.
So at this point, things are, I thought there would be more information today, but there really isn't. We're still maintaining the same rules. We're keeping logs. We are wearing face masks. We're tracking any residents that report to us that they have COVID. We're doing mostly emergency work orders, turnovers, and building maintenance. But we have been doing a little bit of some just regular maintenance as well. And I have found out about a company that can do testing for staff. And so we have ordered kits that we have on staff. We have had some staff really push back against not wanting testing. And so we're still in the process of creating a procedure for that and giving staff information. So I think that it's good to have it on staff, and then also continue to offer education. And if we do potentially have a case, then it might be the fastest way to get tested.
Okay. And at the moment, there is no vaccine requirement.
We do not.
It sounds as if the alternate to that is testing, but there is no clear requirement for the testing. Is that what I'm hearing?
We are still in the process of writing a procedure for the testing and a requirement, but we have not completed it yet.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any questions from the rest of the commissioners? Okay. Then let us move on to welcoming James Griffin, our fee accountant, who is joining the meeting. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself briefly to James. I'm Janet Cramer. Chair of the commissioners and longtime member of the Board of Commissioners. Liz?
Liz Harrison, member I'm in my a 5-year term.
Okay. Donna?
Donna Rathbun. I think I'm called vice chair. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Lee?
And have I been in it for 5 years? I can never remember. It's been a while.
I'd have to look at my chart.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost.
Right. And it says Lee, but it's Byron Stuckey.
And I know I have not been here for 5 years.
But you have been involved in housing for a long time.
Yeah.
And Alicia?
I am Alicia Underwood. I'm the newest commissioner, and I joined in April of this year, and I have been a resident of Brattleboro housing, as well as a family member is currently a resident.
So you probably have more longevity than any of the rest of us.
Yeah, I lived in public housing for 25 years. So.
And I'm glad it was there for you. So we are looking at discussing any key points from the mid-year financials. James.
The mid-year financials actually look very, very well, very good. I went over them when I created them a few weeks ago, and I did not see anything of any major concern. With that being said, the only major concern is the same one I probably bring up every time I talk to the board, and that is A.W. Richards. Again, it is currently showing an operating loss after payment of its principal and interest payments. And it does not make any payment to a replacement reserve. Unlike RCC, which makes both principal and interest payments and the replacement reserve payment and is basically right on budget.
Okay. I'm just wondering where in this packet would we find the information on A.W. Richards?
It should be the second to last one.
Okay.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So it comes to a net loss of 37 and some change after principal and interest payments.
So what can we do about that, James? What would be your recommendations? Is there anything we can do?
I mean, I think we've discussed this with Christine before. I mean, I don't know how Brattleboro works. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say it like that, but I don't know how Vermont works in the sense that I have other clients who have these tax credit properties like you have AWR and RCC. And the biggest glaring difference that I see between yours and most is they're not paying a property tax based on its value. Most of them have worked out some deal with the town or the city where the property taxes, like most of the federal conversions under RAD, I'm not sure if most of you know about that, but one of the things you could have done with your public housing was converted. Well, you did convert to RAD.
We did.
You got the 10% pilot payment. A lot of the jobs that I've seen converted, even the tax credit jobs back here in Massachusetts, their pilot payment is the same as the federal. It used to be 10% of net income, of rental income minus utilities, which is always less than actual real estate taxes. I mean, I don't know if that can ever change, but that's one. And then the only other thing is that you're paying roughly $60,000 in principal and interest payments on a budget of $215,000. I'm sorry, on $300,000 in revenue, you're paying $65,000 or so in change in principal. So your principal and interest payments are close to 23% of everything you bring in cash. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's any way of, renegotiating any of these, renegotiating any of these debts. I mean, RCC's debt alone is only about 15% of its net income, whereas AWR is close to over 20. So those are just the glaring issues, is that the principal and interest payments, I mean, it's hard to say they're high. They're just, compared to what you bring in a revenue, they're at a higher percentage. And then again, we spend, there have been some large expenditures on contract costs and maintaining the building. So between that, a freak snowstorm or two, I'm sure Christine's well aware of that. I mean, but I say that to all my clients. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I mean, one freak snowstorm, wipes out a budget and there's nothing you can do about it. Unlike towns who can just keep paying and paying and paying forever, we don't have that option. So
right.
The
Well,
housing
I know
authority, it looks great. The numbers look great. The financials look great. AWR is just tough.
It's a kind of glaring outlier for our budgets.
Yes, in the sense that I think also part of the problem is that it's a small number of units. So
Well, I know that the heating system there was quite a problem, and Christine and Alicia are nodding as well. So
Well, we have the costs there to maintain the property are very high. And in 2025, we will be able to renegotiate the tax credit. And
Okay.
so that's sort of where we've been talking to Evernorth. So Evernorth is the co-owner with the property with ourselves and the bank that owns it as a tax credit.
Even
And
though
so-
everybody else may remember, I need to be reminded, Evernorth is formed the
Housing
former
Vermont.
Housing Vermont.
Housing Vermont is their former name, and Evernorth is their new name. And Evernorth are the co-owners of Red Clover
Right.
Commons 1,
Right.
2, and this property. And so we are charged with property management of the property. So while it's in our portfolio and we manage the budget, we don't own it outright. And so we can only, they have known that we can't put any money in reserves. It's a real concern. And we're not really, are we even receiving our management fees on it, James?
I am recording them every month as though we were supposed to be getting them. And I think we are up to date. I want to say maybe 1 or 2 months behind.
Right.
But again, I mean, there's like $100,000 owed from prior years worth of management fees that they never paid us. So I mean, that's just the sign that, even when it was first converted, they couldn't afford to pay us our management fees. And we've forgone those because we've only had enough cash to cover operating expenses above and beyond those, not including our management fees.
James, how many units are in that property?
AWR is 21 units, and we have
21?
21, and then we have 2 commercial spaces that we rent.
And the commercial spaces may make money on it per square foot, but it's the 21 rental units that are, driving the issue.
And some are very, yep. Sorry, James. Go ahead, Byron.
Did I understand you to say that we are paying full property taxes?
Yes, you're paying whatever the city, town assesses you based on their property value at a certain dollar per rate.
So the tax credit properties don't get the same pilot as the public housing properties. So A.W. Richards is not part of our public housing portfolio. It's a tax credit property. And so it's assessed differently and so is Red Clover Commons, because they receive the person who's investing to create the building receives a humongous tax credit for creating the low income housing.
But the town didn't get any money for doing that.
The town doesn't, right, but they don't assess the tax credits the same way they assess our public housing. And I can certainly, so I think from what I'm hearing from James is that in Massachusetts, they may assess them at the same 10% pilot. And I can
Just
certainly
like your
go back.
RADs. You have that agreement for the RADs, right?
Yes.
Not all of them, Christine, don't get me wrong, there's not all of them, but I have seen some, and that's what I'm saying is that I think the town cuts them a break. And I think it happens more and more on the smaller ones because, like you said, they know that larger tax properties seem to run better than smaller ones because, again, we're stuck with, 21 units. And if we have just 1 or 2 vacancies, it's a huge difference. If it's a 50, like RCC is what, almost 60 units, 50 units, Christine?
It's 55 units.
Right. If 1 vacant, that doesn't throw much off. 2 vacants probably doesn't throw that off, but 1 or 2 vacants and 21 units, that's, 20, that's a good 2 units is 10% of your rental income on a monthly basis.
Also at AWR, we have several studio apartments, so the rent isn't very high. There's they're tiny units, they're efficiencies.
So between the makeup of them, and again, I'm not saying the town needs to give you the 10% on the pilot. I'm just making, you asked me where we could save money. I'm just saying to you that I've seen other, like I said, they're not all of them, but I've seen others where they've gotten the 10% like HUD. And then, like I said, the 22 to 23% of your rental income that you're paying for your debt. I mean, that's where it comes down to. I think if we could get some relief, but Christine said what, we can renegotiate in 2025?
That's what I heard.
Yes.
In another 3 years, basically.
Right. Maybe we wait it out.
I think that it's a conversation to have with Evernorth because they will ultimately be able to decide and how to move forward. And so I'm happy to bring the asset manager from Evernorth to this meeting to discuss with the board. That might be the best way to get the ball rolling. I think it's something that has been going on since the building came online, which is, I'm guessing, 11 years ago. I think it was a 15-year tax credit.
Yes.
So it's, I think this is something that has been ongoing this entire time. And I think, to be honest, I think we're managing it the best we can because we've kept it. In the past few years, we have prioritized keeping it full. And we've prioritized, turning those apartments very, very quickly whenever they become available. And in the past, we were losing money because it's a difficult building to house because there's different tax credit requirements. And so it's not just a straight, anyone can move in. You have to go into, there's certain requirements for different apartments. And so we've really prioritized, the property management has really prioritized keeping those full, which has helped a little bit. And we've also tried to cut costs with the cleaning costs. And we've really tried to work in other ways where we have control. But James is right. We do a lot of maintenance. I think just in the electrical, we were over $10,000 just on what we thought we would pay for some electrical maintenance cost. And, we do have ongoing problems there. It's a very difficult building to maintain.
I used to work in that building when it was TD Bank.
Oh, okay. Where Wells Fargo is now.
Yeah, I had an office on the first floor when you walk in the back, looking down on the parking lot. Yeah.
Well, it was a business building that went begging for rental for a long time before we negotiated to buy it for housing.
Yeah.
I've seen appeals to the tax on the property tax be successful, and I'm wondering if it isn't worth approaching them.
We could. I think that it would definitely be something we should do with the other owners of the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know the amount of tax credit that the investors are receiving. I don't know if they get $1 million of tax. I don't know what the amount of tax credit they get for this building. And so I'm not sure how that all works out, but we could talk to Evernorth about it, and we could ask them to meet with the board specifically to talk about this building. I think that might be the first step.
Is there any way, James, for you to find out some of the questions that were raised, particularly what the tax credit holders are receiving?
No, that would be a question for your auditors.
Okay.
That would be a question for Otis, is it, Christine?
Yeah, it might be would it be in our most recent audit?
I don't know if it's detailed out if they're getting the 4%. You're talking about the 4% or the 9% I mean, the tax credits are based on a percentage of something. I have clients who have them. Unfortunately, I don't take this the wrong way. I try to stay out of them because they're not my gap, they're tax, and they make a lot of weird journal entries, and they do a lot of transactions that I don't agree with, but it's accepted on that side of the world. So I'm not saying I can't, but I'm saying to you, the questions you're asking, the best person to ask would be Otis. They are experts at tax credit deals. They can give you all your answers relating to the Evernorth's interest in the bank's interest and all that, whether or not they're 4% credits, 9% credits, how much money they want to lose. Because the idea is the investors just want to lose money. So they don't care if you lose money. They just want to lose money. Because then they get to, that's the whole idea of the tax credits, is they want to lose money. So, but however, it doesn't help us if we continue to lose money because, like I said, it hurts our bottom line. It doesn't hurt theirs. They don't care. So I honestly think the best approach to start would be to go to Evernorth and say, what are the chances we can do something about the debt for the next few years until we have a chance to renegotiate it? Just because it's, well, I would try to work it with I would try to sell them that, what if we pay you, I don't know, half, and we put the difference in the replacement reserve? If I'm Evernorth, I'm more concerned about the fact there's no replacement reserve. The building is now 10 years old. And there isn't a dime set aside for anything that goes wrong with it.
Mm.
So, I mean, I guess they don't really care in the sense that, like Christine said, if it's a 15-year compliance period, I'm assuming they're all going to get out. Christine, no? Yes?
Or we'll refinance it in a different, we'll try to figure out.
No, but I mean, the investors will get out
Right.
after 15
Yes.
years, right?
Mhm.
And they'll leave it in your hands.
And then I think what we do is we look for additional investors to look at it as a tax credit. We can then renegotiate for the tax credit.
Well, that is beyond my scope. Like I said, I know a lot of these, what happens after the compliance period is the investors walk away and they leave the building and everything behind to the housing authority, the affordable housing program, whoever owns the building. They give them, whatever's left over of their equity and say, here it is, it's your building, take it and have a nice day. And then you're stuck with the debt.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm saying that it's Evernorth's permanent financing. I think the approach should be to go to them first, even before you go to the town asking about the pilot. I think you should look at Evernorth and say, you know what, we'd like to make this work as much as possible, but in 10 years, we haven't dropped a dime in replacement reserves. Are you not concerned? Because we are. So is there any way we can work out, backdating, pushing some of the debt to the back end or adding 5 years or something, and then we'll place the difference in the replacement reserve? And I would approach that with Evernorth first. That's what I would do.
Okay. That's
even
very
if
helpful.
the town gives you 50% off, it's only a $10,000 savings. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's not going to help. I mean, all we're going to do is if we can make 10,000, we should put it in the replacement reserve. So you know what I'm saying? So it's really, before I hit the town up, who's probably hurting for money too, I think I hit Evernorth up. At least they're the state. They probably should have more money than the town of Brooklyn, than Brattleboro. I mean, just based on, I would hope.
Okay. Other than Richard's building, are the rest of our finances and the rest of our replacement funding appropriate at this point?
Yes,
James?
the RADs are all, Billy Joe is placing the monthly RAD deposits in every month.
Good.
We've now, RCC2 is up and running partially, and so the rest of the public housing will go away in the next, couple of months, Christine?
It will be finished as of November 1st.
Right. So then that'll be another project. And how many units is that?
That's 18.
So I'm not saying it's going to be another AWR, but at 18 units, the only good thing for it is it's a RAD conversion, which means, well, no, it's like, I take that back. It's a tax credit. It's a tax property conversion. So it's 18 units again, right?
Right. The only thing that's helpful is that it's a straight, there's not the different income levels. So it's just the straight, we just have project-based vouchers in it. So we have the automatic project-based voucher.
Oh, is there 18? 18 of them?
And it's contiguous. It's right next to Red Clover 1. So even though they are two separate buildings, in many ways they are a complex. It fits together.
Yeah, so then
we're sharing some of the costs. We're sharing the sewer costs. We're sharing the paving, the property costs, the snow removal.
The grounds, the snow. Yeah, so then RCC2 should probably be in better shape than AWR. But again, and because it's got 18 project base and it's, it's the only thing is, as long as we just got to keep it leased then.
Okay.
Right. But no,
the nice thing about that, RCC1 is very difficult sometimes because we have the wait list is held by Vermont State Housing. We hold the wait list for RCC2 because we hold the vouchers as well. So RCC1, we sometimes have some vacancies. Like if we have someone signed up to move in, it takes a long time to get them in. And if at the last minute they change their mind and say, I actually don't want the apartment, we have to go back and start over again. And we have to work with Vermont State Housing because they own the project-based voucher. So that's where that's where we get into some trouble at RCC1. The nice thing about RCC2 will be it's all of our project-based vouchers. So we manage that wait list. So hopefully that's going to help us a lot.
No, RCC2 sounds like it's in way better shape than AWR is from the start. And so I guess I won't say, I guess I would not be concerned about RCC2, no. And the rest of the programs are running, like I said, at budget or if not better than budget.
Great.
That's very good.
That's good to hear. Right. Any further questions? We have the green checklisting as well.
The other thing,
James?
James, I just have a quick question for you, James, before you go. So I know that we're contributing every month to the replacement reserves, but we haven't been drawing down from those reserves either, have we? We've been using our operating to just pay our regular expenses.
The replacement reserve is supposed to be used for like large capital improvements. So right now, no, for the most part, I think there's like, what would I see? Red combined. The only thing I saw so far was like $10,000 in expenses that were coded to something called additions or, building repairs or something like that. But your operating income can afford, I mean, you're making $300,000 with that 10 grand in there. I wouldn't waste my time looking for that 10 grand back. I would do my best to build up the RAD replacement reserves as high as you can go and never touch them until really needed.
That's where I'm trying.
Right.
That's why I'm saying that. Like, we're trying to use our operating reserves for any major expenses in our RAD properties.
Right, and I would continue to do that. And I don't want to say it, but I mean, in theory, you don't own AWR, but you could help it out if you wanted. I'm not advocating it. In fact, I would never do it. But you could technically take RAD reserves and help it.
And how?
But I'm not advocating it.
Okay. What kind of help are you thinking about, James, if we were to do it?
You can infuse funds into the property.
Okay. So what you're basically saying, we could shift some of our reserves to the replacement reserves for A.W. Richards if we chose to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm
Just
not
want to make sure
advocating for it.
That's what I'm hearing very clearly, but I wanted to make sure I was clear on what.
I should have brought that up early. Technically, although you don't own the property, your RAD properties are 100% owned by the Brattleboro Housing Partnership now. They're not HUD, so they're not federal, they're not state.
Right.
So technically, the reserves related to those 4 properties are yours and the housing authorities to do with what you wish, as long as they're spent on, quote, housing and mission related to the housing authority. So technically, that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to donate money to AWR, you are in your rights to do that. Again, I wouldn't do it, but that's all I'm saying.
Well, I've been on the board long enough to have the federal government claw back some of our reserves some time ago, so I'm always cautious about that. But that's very helpful. Thank you.
But you no longer, remember now, you no longer have any federal reserves.
Yes,
So you should never have HUD clawing back any money back from you ever again, except for possibly on Section 8. But now that you're MTW, HUD should never recapture any of your funds for any reason whatsoever.
That's nice
In
to
fact,
hear.
they don't have any rights to it anymore.
Right. Okay.
Good to know. Yeah.
Yes. Are we ready to say thank you, James, for being here? Any more questions for him?
Aren't you all glad I asked that question?
Yes, indeed.
Sorry.
No.
It's helpful. I really appreciate
that's
it.
why I'm here. I tell Christine that all the time. I tell the board that the housing authority is in better shape than it is now than it was 2 years ago.
Sure. Yes.
And that's because of the conversion to RAD. But I just want to make sure that the board knows that AWR is an issue, and now you've converted to RCC2, but hopefully it won't be an issue because of that. So I guess like I said to Christine, before the board decides to do project 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I might wait 12 months just to see how things work out, but that's your call.
Well, I think there are those of us who would take that as very good advice. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. You've been helpful.
You are welcome. And if you ever need, like I said, have Christine give me a call. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a nice
thanks,
holiday.
Jules. Nice to see you.
And the third thing on the financial review is check signing assignments. In November, Liz Harrison, except I'm going to do it for you on the 12th of November.
Great.
And then I'm doing December. Okay, let's move to updating the updated personnel policy draft review. And Christine and I talked about this, and she very helpfully included a summary of substantive changes to personnel policies, but also included, particularly for people who want to go back and review the present personnel policies and the draft. So before I try to go through anything on this, Are there questions that you want to bring up?
There-
Byron?
Not necessarily questions. There were three things I liked especially. The change in eligibility for benefits seemed
Okay.
very decent.
What number
And-
is that?
Say
Just
again?
so other people can track what you're saying.
Page 8,
Hmm.
eligibility for benefits.
Okay.
Oh, I think,
That's
yeah, number 8. Yep, you're right. Number 8, page 12.
Yes. Under employment status. Okay.
Yes.
Page 23, or am I referring here to item 23 on page 29?
Hmm.
Vacations, it just
Right.
seemed like a very decent vacation provision.
Haven't there in the past been limitations on the amount of time an employee could take together? Because this is a change to removes the limitation of taking 2 weeks.
It removes it for those who are over the 15 plus years.
Okay.
So it had sort of capped and it didn't allow that. But for those who are over the 15 years, it's an additional benefit because we really can't just keep going up and up and up. We have to cap it at some point, but we wanted to make sure that we could give, really feel like we were giving something to motivate people to want to stay longer.
Mhm. Sort of reward longevity. And also, with a very small staff, having 2 people out, having a person out for 2 weeks does indeed make a difference.
It does, yeah.
And a small thing, I just like very, very much the time off for voting.
Okay.
I had one question and one thing I thought was confusing. The question on page 25.
Of the draft or of the old one? Oh, maybe we can find it here.
Page 25 of the proposed policies. Just a second.
It's under hazard pay, use of compensatory time, exempt staff, non-exempt staff.
On page 25, it has considerable material under the heading of exempt and non-exempt staff,
Mhm.
but those categories were at the same time removed from the policies. So I wondered if they needed, if they're going to be confusing. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And so we, when we met with the attorney, we had the description of exempt and non-exempt in the personnel policy. And he felt that it wasn't necessary to be in the policy because we don't determine what is, we determine whose role is exempt and non-exempt, but however, it's a federal guideline. And so we're willing to give people the information about what is an exempt and non-exempt policy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the personnel policy itself to describe what it is.
Mhm. So it seems to still be in the draft, however.
If this is going to be given to personnel, they may need it on page 25, a quick clue to what exempt and non-exempt mean.
We can give them the language of what exempt and non-exempt is, but he suggested to not have it in the actual policy itself. But if you wanted to have us add it again, we could.
Why
To
did he
describe-
suggest that?
I'm sorry, what?
Why did he suggest not to have that in there?
He felt that it wasn't, just like the Family Medical Leave Act, it doesn't, like, we don't create it. We have a reference and we give people a copy of it, but it doesn't have to necessarily be in the personnel policy itself, because while people's jobs may be non-exempt or exempt, we don't determine, we don't set the guideline for what that is. It's just a federal straight. So he said, in the instance of if it changes or if there's other things, you don't necessarily need it in your personnel policy because it's just the federal rule.
But I'm raising just a picky point, which is that the personnel policies are going to have some considerable language under those headings, distinguishing between non-exempt staff and exempt staff. I'm just thinking it might be in this section
Right.
useful to say something about what that means.
Okay.
Or here's a suggestion, or just have a slash that says, as per federal guidelines.
Yeah, or, refer to the federal guidelines for an explanation of what those statuses mean, something like
So it
that.
does, on the page 24, it does says whether an employee is eligible for overtime pay or compensatory pay is dependent on the employee's classification as defined in the Fair Labor Standards Act,
Okay.
FLSA, which is what
Mhm.
which is what determines the exempt and non-exempt.
Make one more try. I doubt that new staff are going to go looking in the federal guidelines to know what this personnel policy means when it talks about non-exempt and exempt
So
staff.
did you feel that what we had previously in that draft, he felt that what we had previously in the draft
On
was
that-
fine, but it wasn't as complete as the actual language of the but we can keep what we had in the original draft, which in our personnel policies currently, we have that information. Is that the information you'd like to have kept in it, or did you want something, would you like the whole,
It's,
would you like-
it's not what I'd like. It's whether the board feels there's a possible bewilderment when new staff hit those terms, since they're not explained. That's all.
So would the board recommend that we keep the language from the current policy? Or would the board recommend that we add the full Fair Labor Standards Act?
Thoughts from the board? And Donna, you may be working with this at the bank.
Yeah, this is in HR. It's not normally where
Okay.
I live.
He said, I mean, and I could be wrong, but the attorney said that traditionally a personnel policy doesn't explain the difference between exempt and non-exempt, but that doesn't mean that our policy can't.
Well, it certainly does mean if someone comes in with a question, that's the opportunity for them to talk to HR and understand it. I see you nodding, Elisha.
Yeah.
Thoughts from you?
I'm in HR now, so
Oh, Okay.
so yeah, the language normally just says exempt and non-exempt, and when they come in to do their onboarding, if they have questions, they just ask me.
mhm.
Okay.
I personally, that's okay.
Liz?
Okay.
I personally think that the previous statement of when an employee is eligible for overtime pay or compensation, depending upon the employee's classification as defined in the Fair Labor Standards Act, that can be looked up by anybody. And I think that's sufficient because it refers to where the definition is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And in the days when one would have to page through things instead of using electronic device, it's a very different thing.
That's right. And I think the less paper and less
Right.
words is better.
Okay.
I think if it helps at all, I think historically it was added intentionally
Mhm.
because we had a staff member who thought other people were non-exempt
Ah,
and started talking to them about how they were paid. And so it kind of created this a little bit of an internal issue. And so at that time, I think it made, I think when they drafted the policy in 2018, it made sense because of that situation. It was sort of a result of that. I'm saying this because I'm thinking this historically, and maybe I'm wrong. David, you were part of the 2018 policy as well, but I feel like there were several instances that were very specific about situations that happened with specific cases of staff. And so we've really tried to go through the policy and take any of those out. So nothing in our policy should be a direct result of one person doing something at some point. Like, we've really tried to take away some of those things. However, to Byron's point, I agree. I mean, I didn't have a problem with leaving it in at all. I mean, we submitted it to the attorney with that in, and he made the recommendation of taking it out and said, you really don't need this. It might be more confusing. But I'm happy to adhere to the board. I'm happy to put either in or take or put in the actual legal language, or give them that document as well. Whatever the board believes would be the best for the staff.
Or if people think it's okay to just leave it for people to ask if they don't understand.
well, Alicia, if you're in HR right now and your microphone is off. There. So as you talk about onboarding, I think, you're the one to give us guidance as to how it works for you.
So when a person is, after they're hired, they do all of their onboarding documents, and they are, at least with us, we do it in person, and they're able to ask any questions as they are filling out their paperwork.
And one thing we have is with every staff member, when we give them their letter of when we give them proposal of employment, we document on it whether it's exempt or a non-exempt position.
Okay.
Just to reinforce that, as well as in the job description, every job description indicates the exempt or non-exempt status of the position. So there's no surprise.
Thank you, David. That's helpful.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. But I had one last question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, of course.
On page 30, sick pool. I know sometimes a sick pool can mean two different things. One is that it's a pool of unused time contributed by other staff. When one of their colleagues has extraordinary need, that they create a pool that they can draw on. Is that how this pool works, or how does the pool get created?
So the pool, so we had previously had a sick pool. We had taken it out of the personnel policy a few years ago. We've been asked by employees to have it brought back. And how it would work is every employee is maxed at 6 weeks of sick time. So 240 hours, unless they were grandfathered in and they have more sick time before we had changed that policy. And so once you hit 240, then you are no longer allowed to accrue additional sick time.
That would explain your a sick pool made up of over accumulated time.
So
over days.
So how this sick pool will work will be every single employee who is at that point 8 hours of sick time will be contributed for them, whether they would have accrued more or they just hit the 240 that week.
Mhm.
As of our fiscal year beginning, however many employees we have that are at the 240, and some who may be over because they were grandfathered in,
Okay.
we
Mhm.
will put in 8 hours. And it is a first come, first serve for has people apply for it. So it
Mhm.
would be for people who do not have enough sick time accumulated, and they would be able to then apply for whatever there was in the sick pool.
Okay.
It's a corporate pool. It's not per person pool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It probably won't be a lot. It will probably be a small amount. And I think that and I can't speak to this, but there were some concerns over the former sick pool. And that's why the organization had gotten rid of it. However, there are some people who would like to have it seen come back. We don't have a lot of people who get to that point. We probably only have a very small handful who reach the 240.
But the pool is a nice thing to have.
It is. I think so as well. And I think it could be helpful for people. And that's why I added it in. And the language was really just language that I drafted myself. As a way of doing it in a way that's the least, I guess, like also the least amount of administrative burden. I think prior, the administrative burden was very, very high. People had to vote. There was people had to know the situation. I don't want to get into any of that. I just want someone to apply. Nobody needs to know who's applying. No one's voting. It's a first come, first serve every year.
Seems good.
So we are at the point where I would ask for a potential motion to adopt the updated personnel policy. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Byron, thank you. Any further discussion? You ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay.
And can I just be
Seems
clear, would this take effect as of tomorrow? Like, would this be in effect immediately?
Is there any reason for it not to take effect immediately?
I don't think so. I just wanted to double check that
Okay.
was. Yeah.
No, we did not put a date on that. You're correct. Okay. So that as of this meeting,
Mhm.
we have voted to adopt the updated personnel policy.
Thank you.
Thank you. What
for all
good
that
discussion.
work.
Yeah, thank you for the discussion. It was a lot of work, Byron. I'll be honest, it took a lot longer than we thought. And a lot of thought went into it. And we started with something that was really good. Chris had a great personnel policy. So we started with something good. And I thought it was prudent to have the attorney look at it first.
Yes, indeed.
That way they really could take on anything just that was, illegal or just didn't make any sense. And then send it to the staff and the board.
I think it's a very good policy.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to the monthly property review and property management report. Yellow. Any questions? I'm very glad to see that under the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program, we have had 20 households apply and have received $37,574.65 in funds, which can make a big difference. Although, as I was going through the rent received, there's still quite a bit outstanding.
Yes, at Moorcourt and Ledgewood, we have some really big balances.
Mhm. And have those households applied?
No. And so some of them they have received notice. And so we are working with our attorney. And I believe legal aid is working with the client. So they should be able to support them in applying.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Mhm.
Any other comments on the property management report? I was noting, Christine, that you mentioned how because the the listing goes through Vermont State rather than for us. It takes longer, and as they noted in the report, that there are, I think, 3 vacant units in the RAD units. And knowing this community is so tight on housing, it's disturbing to see that we have vacant units.
Well, so for the RAD units, we have 3 vacant units, and you can see that some of them were people who are deceased. So we're just in the process of turning over the apartments. We'll have someone move in. For the Red Clover Commons, we have 4 vacants, and we have 2 applications waiting for approval from Vermont State Housing. That's the property that we really struggle with. Vermont State Housing is they manage our wait list because they manage the voucher. So for instance, the residents at Red Clover Commons have to complete a yearly paperwork for Vermont State Housing and for us. And the Vermont State Housing they hold the voucher. So they hold what pays for the rent for that building. They hold the wait list. And so they're also in charge of the VRAP program. So I think many of you probably have heard that a lot of people are applying for that program. And so they're definitely, like most organizations, they have, COVID has really put some barriers into the speediness of some of the processes. And so, we are really reliant on them and it's getting better. It had been a little bit difficult in the last few months. We're really working with them and we're trying, but that's where I think that's the place where you'll see the most frustration is Red Clover Commons.
Okay.
Christine, why does Vermont State own those? How did that happen? What was that process?
So David's going to test me here. So David, jump in anytime if I get this wrong. So as a housing authority, we're only allowed to have a certain percentage of our vouchers, our Section 8 vouchers, be project-based. And I believe it's 20%. Am I correct?
25.
25%. I was close.
25.
So when we went to convert our public housing and we built RCC2, we needed to have vouchers in that building, and we didn't have enough. We only have, how many vouchers do we have, David?
At the time, we had 187. So with the 25% cap on project-based vouchers, we had 55 units at Red Clover Commons. So in a deal that was made between Vermont State Housing and Brattleboro Housing Partnership, sorry, Christine, Vermont State Housing said, we'll do the right thing. You send us the funding for Red Clover Commons and we will manage the project-based vouchers, because Vermont State Housing has over 4,500 vouchers, so they don't. They were able to project base a larger property than we were and could ever at this point. So that's then where we handed over the administration of the subsidies to Vermont State Housing for Red Clover Commons. HUD would not permit us, any extension at the 25% cap of project-based vouchers. And please. Go ahead, Janet.
No, just saying briefly, that's why there was a discussion of Red Clover 2, that we manage the wait list for that as
Correct.
The difference.
Correct. And that we do. The difference being, again, with Red Clover Commons 2, with the 25% cap on our project-based vouchers, we are able to sustain the 18 units at Red Clover Commons too. So not only do we manage it, but we also subsidize it.
Great. Okay.
And so we also have several project-based vouchers in the community. So we have we have the Snow Block, we have the Wilder Building, and is that it, David?
Snow Block, Upper Story, and A.W. Richards for an additional 16 project-based vouchers. So with the 18 at RCC2, the 16 in the community at large, Upper Story, Snow Block, and A.W. Richards, it brings us to having now approximately 8 project-based vouchers available to us if we would like to project-base those. Looking at the forest through the trees with the world of moving to work in the near future, we could change that considerably. We would have to certainly take action and get a waiver, but we could look now, being MTW, to extending the cap on project-based vouchers. Something down the road to consider.
Okay. Liz?
I know there's a good sized waiting list for Red Clover. Why are there only 2 applicants waiting approval instead of 4, since there are 4 vacancies?
Because we do 2 we have to do 2 we do 2 at a time. They'll approve 2 at a time.
Okay, all right.
And this report, Wellness Services Monthly Board Report, Orange, is looking at the Resident Advisory Communications Committee, the SASH, and the benefit of having Jeanette White with us, who's helping out by researching available grants to build a playground and bike path at Ledgewood. And she certainly is working also for the moving to work. Any questions on this?
So everybody got moved okay from Melrose to Red Clover?
We're still in the process. So we have, as of today, I believe we have 3, no, we actually have 2 residents left to move to RCC 2. And we have 1 resident that's moving to Hayes. So we have 3 residents still at Melrose. So we have 1 person moving this week, 1 person moving, and 2 people moving next week.
I love the sentence. 11 residents were successfully relocated with the support of a solid team and 2 moving companies with great patience and human compassion. So I'm sure that the human compassion was very important for that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And all of the teamwork that you all are very good at.
We quickly realized that we would never be, we've hired some people to come in and support residents in terms of going through items and getting rid of things and packing. And that has been very successful. And we have the moving companies, but we realized very quickly that our best resources for supporting our residents were people we already had on staff. It would be impossible to bring people in from the outside. And so Lorelei Morissette and Jake Bursky, the SASH coordinator, are really totally hands-on. And it has been helpful because they've helped to really build relationships with the residents.
Wonderful. Any more comments? Let's move on to the Resident Advisory Communication Committee. And the list of both the role and concerns and then particular property updates. People at Moore Court talking about power washing the building, this green on the back of the building. Those are pretty older buildings.
It sounds like it was a serious meeting.
We have repaved Moore Court. That was completed last week. That's been a project that we've had on our books for about 1.5 years. It was in collaboration with the town. The town paved the road part and we paved the parking area, and we did it all at once.
Great.
That was great.
The discussion with Jeanette talking about don't count income from 18-year-olds who are still in school. Does that apply broadly? Is there just a few situations with that?
Well, it applies to anyone who has a family member who is in that situation. And so it's something that we've talked about for a long time. It's something that I've always really struggled with myself. I've thought it just seems it's a HUD rule. And I'm, to be honest, I don't know if there's a waiver to change it. And so it's something that I think we should look into as we plan for moving to work, certainly. However, it's always been something that I really thought of as being a real hardship for some families.
Mm.
Having a recent high school graduate who is 18, I know it would be hard for me to say when she's working, oh, you need to give me 30% of your income from your part-time job to pay for
Mhm.
rent. So I think what happens is the family pays the difference, which is a real hardship for them.
Mm.
So I can understand why families struggle with that. But I don't know, that's something we'll have to really do some research to see if it's anything that
Okay.
we could change.
So it sounds as if you'd have to ask for a waiver or do it under moving to work.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The general rules that create low-income communities, for instance, perhaps allow more individuality in apartments, paint, etc. Comments on that?
I mean, I think it's something we can certainly look at. I think this discussion of information was for our strategic plan as well. And so giving, I think when we meet tomorrow, I met with Maggie this morning. I think a big topic we're going to talk about is how do we create communities where people are proud of where they live and they have a sense of ownership. So I think those are conversations to have. I can tell you from a maintenance point of view, it's going to, I think there's going to be some pushback. So I think thinking about that and like what is really realistic, like what would make sense, what could create some sort of ownership in an apartment, however, not create a very big burden of turnover costs. What could we do that would make it easier? First of all, if I had to paint an apartment, it would look terrible. I remember my first apartment painting it lime green in my bedroom. And I'm sure the landlord, I'm sure it costs a lot to refinish, but, and I'm not saying that would happen. I just think that we need to really think about what it really looks like. But I love the idea that people want to make it their home. And so how do we do that in a way that really is really beneficial for the resident, but also doesn't cost a lot in the long run. So I think it's something to think about for sure.
There were comments on the laundry facilities in the apartments.
At Ledgewood Heights.
Ledgewood Heights, yes. People are asking to put their own separate laundry facilities in, or I'm not one to interpret what that means.
Yes. So Moore Court, they have the ability to they can have a washer dryer in their own apartment. There's no laundry facilities on site. At Ledgewood, there are laundry facilities on site. And so people are not able to have their own washer and dryer in their apartments.
They still able to hook up to the faucets, but not a direct. Okay.
No, they're actually not supposed to do that either.
Okay.
It becomes a flood risk.
Thank you.
So it's something that the board could consider. I think that's something that we could think about in the long run. If this is a direction we wanted to go in.
A possibility, would it be a possibility to have just a dryer in the apartment?
I'd have to talk to maintenance. It's a really great question. Let me talk to them. I don't even know I don't know what the cost would be to even begin to set up a washer and dryer for each individual apartment. I don't know what
it would be large.
Yeah.
I mean, I can certainly see the concern about flood possibilities.
Well, with hooking up to the faucet, absolutely. Those can cause a lot of problems. So we would have to, if we were to do it, they have a washer and dryer hookup in the individual apartments at Moore Court. And I don't know, Ledgewood was not designed to have that. So I don't know I wouldn't even know how to begin to estimate. So I would have to rely on the maintenance to get a cost analysis per apartment of what that would look like.
I think we would also have to look at the electrical service. Do they have enough of that in that facility, in that complex?
Right.
If everybody had their own electric dryer.
That's right.
Any other comments on this? The very nice sash flash,
I love sash flash.
right?
Yep.
And the vampire tacos on the back, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. Now, David, you are here and we are at Section 8, Shelter Plus Care and Transitions. Are you speaking about that?
Not really, but
Yeah,
I am going
really.
to talk
Okay.
about Section 8 if I can, because
Sure.
it's that time of year where new amounts of dollars for subsidies or utility allowances are brought to us that we need to take action on. And last meeting, I know you all approved the fair market rents for 2022. And then at the 11th hour on Friday, I received the utility allowance amounts that I would like action taken on so that we can begin them on January 1st.
Okay.
The sooner the better, simply because in November I perform recertifications for the month of January. So it would be nice to have those established.
Okay. Thank you, Christine.
Christine has posted.
Yes.
What, in short, to share with you, those that are highlighted in the lime green, Christine's bedroom color, are those that have been proposed by HUD for 2022. In short, what you will see is that across the board, anything that is fueled by either gas or oil has increased pretty good. Pretty good, yes. I'm going to say 20, 30, sometimes 40% in some situations. And that's our current reality, as we know when we go to the gas station at the moment as well. You will see the electric fuel or the electric subsidy type being a negligible increase, but still there's been an increase of a few dollars.
Yeah.
So in short, what I am proposing to you all is that we accept the HUD stated 2022 utility allowances that I currently have posted in the lime green. What that means on the subsidy front is that those program participants who are responsible for the cost of those utilities have those allowances deducted from their share of rent. So in turn, that would result in our subsidy increasing because of that. The good news is that about 95% of our housing choice voucher participants that are renting in the private market already have heat and hot water included. So there really wouldn't be a significant impact on our subsidy costs each month. Okay. There would be a negligible one, again, with the electric cooking and the other electric amounts. I would probably have less than 5 out of 150 subsidies out there that have to pay for heat and hot water. So very, very small percentage.
Comments from commissioners? Just want to clarify what I think I heard was that people who get the heating and cooking subsidies have this amount deducted from the portion of the rent that they are responsible for. And they pay for the cost of the heating and cooking themselves rather than the housing partnerships paying for it.
That is correct.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the 22 utility allowances.
I shall move.
Thank you, Byron. And there's a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? Abstaining? No, it's unanimous. Thank you for bringing that to us, David. Could I ask some very brief comments on how the various vouchers are working, particularly the mainstream vouchers?
You may, and I'm glad to share with you that in the last month and even beginning November 1st, we've added a couple of new participants to the mainstream voucher family.
Great.
So I think we now are or will be, as of November 1st, at a total of 8 or 9, which is great. And let me think back to one of those is an applicant that will remain housed in place, so they do not have to move and will utilize the subsidy. And another has been on a waiting list with a community landlord that was approved earlier this month.
Okay.
And will be moving to their new home on the south side of town in the next week.
Great. Wonderful. Any other comments, questions from commissioners?
I think it's great.
Okay. And we then move to the FEMA project, large projects, and a report from Chris Hart.
Folks, I'm going to dive out.
Yep.
So thank you much
David.
for
Thank
your
you.
action. I appreciate
Thank you for
your
being
time.
here, David.
Y'all be well.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Create some more housing.
So for the FEMA PDMA, so if any of you have been by Melrose, it looks like a major construction zone. Many of our beautiful trees have been removed, which has been really sad for many of us, and myself included. It feels really different. And so, but I can really see the work getting done, and I can see the beginning was tough, but I feel like I'm starting to see where we're going. And especially now that they're taking the foundations out, and it's been a lot. They've completed a lot of work. One thing to note will be the culvert will be going in after the new year. They're really struggling to get that piece. So it will be going in the spring. And so the road will not be shut down until then. They will build the road that's going to connect George Miller Drive to Melrose, which will go through the two
around
buildings.
Yes.
They will be building that prior, but we won't be needing to close the bridge until the spring, which is great because we still do have residents. It's been really hard. We actually expedited a couple of moves because the construction was so overwhelming that it was just really not a good place for people. So we expedited 2 moves because of that.
Okay. And of course, the intersection where the Melrose Avenue comes into Route 9 is very bad. Is there any consideration given to try to improve that intersection as people try to go through it
when we close
the bridge?
Yeah. So hopefully the bridge. So the estimate we have for the bridge being closed is only a few days.
Right.
And so when we had put that estimate in, they said that they were going to have a flagger there.
Right.
Or a light, actually. I'm sorry. No, a light. They were going to have a temporary light. So that's the current plan.
Good. Wonderful. Well, certainly we are all looking forward to seeing Red Clover too.
Absolutely. I think that the board should plan a day to see it in person.
That would be wonderful.
I think that I'll send out an invite. I'll send out some times, but I know that many of you would like to see it in person. And I think that we should do that. The celebration, the ribbon cutting will be virtual. So it's not going to have the same feeling. We would like to have another, hopefully in the spring, have a celebration to invite everybody. But we knew that with the residents who live there, it's such a vulnerable population that it would be hard to bring so many people from around the state into that property.
Okay. And the annual meeting, remind us again of
Byron
the
has a question, maybe.
Oh, sorry. Byron?
Can I get away with going back to the Melrose site for a minute?
Yes.
Sure.
I have a strong feeling based on some experience that if the Melrose site is going to be a lively community place, especially for kids, now that we're moving stuff around, it would be wonderful to build a hill. Kids need hills. I think we all need hills.
Well, I know that the redo of Melrose was done as a federal project or a state project. I say I know, but there was indeed a bidding process for all of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether at this date, a change in the plans could be made. Christine, have you any thoughts?
I didn't hear what Byron had asked for. I'm sorry, that he wanted a what?
A hill.
A hill?
For kids to run up and down?
Oh,
And sled up and down. And
huh. No, I haven't. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I don't think that was something that was in the engineer's proposal, was to have a hill.
Well, I think the whole purpose of the engineer's proposal was to widen the possibility for water to spread out at that point.
It's going to be more of a basin than a bit. Yeah.
And to provide flood protection for downstream, so that if a flood came to the point where our culvert will be, there's space for the water to open out on a flat area. At least that's how I read the plans, engineers' plans. So to add a hill would simply be increasing the opportunity for water to rush down rather than to spread out.
I'm not talking about a big hill. It's a big site.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Where I think probably being in touch with Chris Hart, who has been overseeing this, and would Sue Fillion, the town planner, be the other person to be in touch with?
Yes, it could be. The other piece would be, I think that, part of, once this work is complete, it will really be a project of, that the board will have a pretty big role in, will be determining what we want to do with the remainder of the space. And so we'll be charged with that, as well as working with our community members. That might be the opportunity to do that. I don't think at this point, I mean, I could certainly propose it to the engineers, but I can't imagine. I mean, the FEMA plan was accepted a considerable amount of time ago. I don't think we could change the FEMA plan at all.
Right.
And in the meantime, they do have Memorial Park, and that has hills.
Yes. And Memorial Park is not that far away.
Yeah, my other concern about that is if you had something like that, would that area support parking? And I mean, that might attract lots of people, lots of families. Would there be the capability to do that?
I think you're imagining a much bigger hill than I'm.
Okay.
Well, at least we could think about it down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or up the hill.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be facetious. All right. Next on the agenda is strategic planning. And everybody has received these reports of the interviews, both with the staff, with commissioners, and with the people in the community who know us or know us partway. Christine, do you want to take that? Because our meeting tomorrow morning at 9 is going to be on this.
So hopefully those of you who can attend, I'm excited to see you there. So we are going to be reviewing a lot of the information that Maggie has accumulated, and based on all the information that she has received from you, from the staff, from our stakeholders, from residents, we're at the point now where she wanted to take a little bit of time to say, this is what we have so far.
Mhm.
We're still accumulating information from our residents. So we still haven't received the survey back yet. We'll have more information from that. And we'll also have information where we are going to go through all of the complaints and document like what we get, what we've had, to see if we see a pattern. I think that would be a really good indication of what our residents are feeling. I think that would be helpful in the strategic planning process to really see what types of complaints we receive and if there's any patterns. But tomorrow will be a great opportunity to really just look at what the data is currently and sort of see where we want to go in the plan. Maggie's also, per your request, putting together a board report of all the information. So, and because the board had asked for information specifically from stakeholders about our performance and how we're doing. And so she's going to accumulate that information as well. That
But some of this
tomorrow
covers that.
Mhm.
Could I make a suggestion, which I will also make tomorrow, that besides looking at complaints, we look at compliments? Do we get compliments from residents? Do they tell us what's important?
That I think will come from the survey, hopefully.
Okay, okay.
So the survey specifically asks what we're doing right, where we need to improve, the same SWOT analysis. So I think you're right, Janet, you're right on it. But I think that the complaints will be an interesting place for us to see, what percentage are complaints about smoking? What percentage are complaints about other residents? We get very few complaints about us as an organization.
Mhm.
Most of our complaints are about residents, about other residents.
Mm.
I would say, without having the actual data, I would say probably 95%, because I look at the complaints. So most of it is resident on resident. And so I think that's going to be helpful for us if we really want to think about deliberately changing community. If we want to make an impact in the community, I think we need to know where people are struggling the most with their.
Liz.
I saw that it starts at 9, but there was no end time. Is this an open meeting? Because I've got a tight schedule tomorrow, and I just don't know how much I can participate.
It goes until 10:30.
Okay, it's
an hour and a half. And so participate as much as you can. I know, Alicia, you said that it didn't fit for you. Do you have some thoughts? Because certainly, as I said earlier, you have more longevity than the rest of us. So if there are any thoughts, particularly after you read these analyses, please share them with us.
Yeah, I'd like to do that in writing.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That's what I'm asking.
Cool.
In writing,
Thank you.
because that would make it easier for you.
Yeah.
We are also going to record it for other people to review. And I'm happy to share that with you, Alicia. The other piece is it's really hard to find a time that meets for everybody. It was hard just to find this time, and we had to go back and forth. So we do have some staff who want to be there who can't be there, and so they're going to meet with Maggie separately, and you'd be welcome to attend that meeting. Or if other commissioners are unable to come, you'd be welcome to attend that meeting. And so what I would suggest is we try to find a time that works for all of you together. It's really hard for the big group to find a time that works for everybody.
It's just for me, 2 meetings in the same week during the day is just really hard for me to get away to go to right now with my new job. So if this was at night and then that was during the day, I could make it work. But
we, as you notice, we are trying something new by meeting during the day to make it easier for some commissioner members too. So we are always a work in process. Okay.
Did I, a question?
Yes, sure.
Did I understand that some information about what's already been learned was distributed to the board?
Well, it was in my packet. It may not. I may simply, because I had it from a meeting with Maggie Foley, I may have tucked this into my packet, and you may not have had it. So I'm certain that in the meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow, it will be discussed and may be available. I don't know, Christine.
She did not send anything out to the group. She's going to
Okay.
be reviewing it with the group, and then there might be information to send separately. The information that Janet has was just, there's the core group, which is myself, Maggie, Janet, and Jeanette.
And I apologize because I had tucked mine in with my board materials. I shouldn't have tempted anybody with something you didn't have. I'm sorry. But you will hear tomorrow and there will be more.
So you haven't missed anything, and there's no homework or prep
Right.
work for this. It's just come
Very good.
as you are.
The last item on the agenda is Brattleboro Housing Opportunities, parentheses, moving to work.
Right. So we have our community meeting this Wednesday with partners, again, to be doing very similar, to really basically share with them some of the information that we've already gleaned and we've already prepared from our application. So we're really not straying from our application. I think our first year will be based on the recommendations that we had for our application, in our applications, which was specifically to change the recertification process. So that's going to be one change, and then to make it less frequently, to cut back on administrative burden and also the burden for residents. And so a draft of that plan will be, we will put out on November 1st for public review, and then the board will be reviewing it at the December meeting.
Okay. Great. Any additional business? Do I hear?
Our annual meeting will be on the 15th. I just wanted to remind everybody of
Thank
that,
you.
November. And that's a noon meeting. So our annual meeting is always at noon. So that is at noon. And we are having the celebration prior to that meeting. So it will be at 11. Our Red Clover Commons celebration will be at 11. It will also be virtual. And then the annual meeting will be at noon.
Okay. And it's virtual for everyone. So it will be easy. It won't be as much fun because there has always been some wonderful goodies, as well as the chance to see both residents and commissioners and staff together. But let us hope next year.
Right.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. A second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Donna. All those in favor?
Aye.
I quipped at another meeting that I would normally say, all those in favor, please say goodbye, but I won't. Thank you all for a really good, thoughtful meeting. I think we had a wonderful discussion of the personnel policies as well as the other things here, but I really appreciate the thought that goes into it. And all of the work, and all of the work that Christine does to make all of this possible.
That's right.
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 Goodbye.